Welcome to a Facehammer video where I'm going to be talking all about the new Ionus Cryptborn model, and I'm going to be showing you how I went about painting mine. Games Workshop sent me this box, thank you very much. It's been a while since I've been really inspired by a model that I just wanted to paint it for the model. That ticks all the boxes for me, I love it. So I thought I'd do a video on it. GW sent me an email, said any that are finished for Monday, they can feature on the community site. So my target is to get this painted over the weekend. Now, normally when I do a project, I like to do try a new thing. I don't really have time to think of that for this model, so I'm just going to go, okay, I'm going to paint it, I'm going to do box art, I'm going to talk about my experience, decisions I made, sub-assemblies, things like that. Hopefully you find it useful, helps you paint your kit. What I would like to say before I get into this is that tools and stuff I use, I'm not going to be too specific about what you need to use. You can use whatever you're comfortable with. Obviously, people have been hobbying, they've got their own things. So I will talk about what I use, and if you think that's cool, then maybe you can pick those up yourself. The other thing, I do have an airbrush. I'm not going to use an airbrush. Now, a couple of reasons for that. One, I think that immediately it's a barrier for people who don't have one. If I do content and they don't have an airbrush, it's difficult to maybe adapt down, but it's easy for someone who doesn't have an airbrush to like scale up their technique using an airbrush because they're comfortable with it. So what I am going to do is I'm going to use colored spray cans, which is kind of one of my quick techniques to get colors down and get a project done quickly. I use it quite a lot, especially with terrain, with masking tape. Get terrain painted super quick, looks nice. It's not necessarily finished, then you can go in and do the details later. Or if you're like me and you've got so many projects, you just leave it as it is and it stays like that for 8 years. Don't do that, but that's what I do. So I'm going to get into this video and show you what I'm going to go through and do. So let's look. So this is the instructions. So obviously instructions, we all know what they look like. I'm going to talk through the assembly. So you can see here, it's like the body, it's fairly straightforward stuff. What I will say is the joins are really useful because they are in amongst the scale line. So you don't really get gaps. You can see here, there's a natural lines there anyway because they're between the scales. So it's a really cleverly designed kit. And where you've got your typical seam down the back, that's something you'll have to tidy up. But if you do that carefully, that's so well engineered, you generally don't need to know. I always use contact professional glue, and if you put a little bit on both sides and then just squidge it, it kind of roughs up. And then I use Tamiya paper. So this is sanding sheet. It's a foam sheet with a rough surface. I use this all the time to sand my mold lines and gaps over it. You can bend it, you can like cut it. This is a strip I've cut off, so this isn't how it comes. You can cut triangles, whatever you want to do, and it's really good stuff. I really recommend this. Now this is for finishing. If you do have any big gaps, you won't with this model if you've done it properly. This stuff's great. Plastic putty. Some people use you just use sprue glue, which is just polycement mixed, Tamiya's polycement mixed with plastic to make a goop. You can buy other products, Green Stuff World do it, whatever. Any gap for the green stuff. I don't really like using green stuff to fill models, but this stuff's great. One thing I will say, if you're using stuff like this, these sort of tools come in really handy, and they're just like rubber tipped sculpting tools. These are from Green Stuff World, but you can get them from anything really. They're just for like clay. You can get like clay sculpting tools, which are like soft. They're really good because you can go in and you can see where I've used it. You can just take the excess off and you can just smooth over. It depends on the type of. They're really cheap. I mean, you can pick stuff up from Amazon like that, really cheap as well. It says wrecking his joint. So these sort of things. Now, some people, when they use this glue, they talk about it clogging because it's got a really fine nozzle. You can see this. It's really, really fine. Now, I don't use a lighter. Some people get a lighter and just burn it. I never use a lighter. You can use... I've got this old strip of piano wire that I've had for like 20 years. And literally, all I do is I just push this into the end and go... You don't have to use piano wire. You can use any brass rod. I think this is gauge is probably like 1/4 mil. And all you need is something that can go down the metal tube, and you literally just, if it's clogged, you put it down the end, and you just do that, and that unclogs it. You don't need to worry about all that other stuff. If you put the cap on, and one of the things with this nozzle does adjust and come out. So what you want to do is make sure that there is a seal to stop it clogging as well. So don't have it too far in. And then when you store it down. It's on like it's got like this. I think the small one even has it. You store it down. I get this from Element, you get it from whatever. But if you want to support us, click through the link, all that stuff in the description. Got Amazon store as well. Set of cutters. These are from Amazon. These are like really high precision stuff. So they've got one blade, one block. They're adjustable. They're very expensive. You need to be quite careful with them, but they are brilliant. I will say that. I still use a set of normal cutters. Obviously a knife. Now I don't use X-Actos. I've got this old GW one, and I've got these Swan blades, which basically, I've got a whole pack of them on eBay for like a tenner. I've got like hundreds of them. They're non-sterile, and this one's quite blunt. You notice like I compress it into my skin and do that, and it doesn't cut me. Now, I quite like a blunt blade because I use my tool for two things. One, it still cuts, but I also like to use it to scrape mold lines. And I find if it's too sharp, you get that judder. Now, this is probably a little bit too dull right now. Changing the blades is easy. It's 10A. You just take it out there, put a new one in. So, Tamiya sand sheet, they've got different grades. This is a bit finer. This is great. I don't know if they still sell these, but this is actually great for mold lines as well. It's basically like a big blunt blade. Anyway, enough of that. You probably know all that stuff, so apologies. But if you don't and you want any tips, you feel free to ask questions in the comments or join the Discord and ping me on there. I'm trying to be a bit more active in there. Okay, cool. So you got the main instructions. Not that exciting. You've got your main dragon and its tail, and it's got the wings. That says paint the wings separately, paint the head separately. Now, way I've done mine is I have assembled the base and the dragon. Now, the dragon is not actually glued to the base. I've used the best tool, Blue Tack. Now, what I've done here is clean this off. I've put a little bit of blob of Blue Tack on the join points. Well, not where I just pulled it off, but anyway. And the reason for that is I'm going to spray, and you notice the Blue Tack I've got here. This is just to keep a little bit of plastic, because I like using plastic glue. I want to make sure I've still got something to bond. So I've just put the plastic, because when you spray, one, I don't want to fill those recesses up with paint, which means that the stuff doesn't fit as well. And two, I don't really, I want it to use plastic glue, not super glue. So that's basically the main reason. Now, the base itself, this is just assembled as is. Now, what I've done here is I just stuck some slate, and I tried out these two textures because this model's not really going to go in any of my armies. I don't need to match any base in. I've got these two Pro Acryl that I bought, a fine one and a coarse one. Now, the coarse one was a little bit too coarse, and the fine one is probably a little bit too fine. Now, what I probably will do in the future is mix them together and then apply them. So I kind of want a half and half mix in the same pot. I don't care about the color. I'm going to spray paint it anyway. But these were just the ones they had, coarse and fine. It could have been grey, it could have been brown. I probably prefer a grey one, but whatever, doesn't matter because they're going to get spray painted. So just super glue those down. I just tried to hide. Now, normally when you're doing these bases and they've got this like textured floor, I like to try and cover that with the texture I'm putting on the rest of the base, because it's really obvious. So if you see here, this like Games Workshop sculpted ground, if you don't cover that, it's really obvious when you paint it, the difference between the ground and the model ground. So if you just use, and I do use this, you can get these kind of spatula things, but I use like the GW one that I've had for ages, and you just put it on and you just move it around and make sure you cover as much of that as possible. So this here, this is where the plastic is. Now, what I wanted to do was have different degrees of texture. I was going to use crackle paint, but I've used it to death. So, yeah, that's that. So that for me is going to be quite easy to paint that. I can get into everything. So I didn't sub-assemble anything. That's my cat hair on there. That's my that's the base. And then obviously I don't want to stick the dragon to it because I'm going to be spraying the dragon in a red. Now, I am going to follow the official colour. I'll talk about the colour palette in a little bit and how I'm going to vary it, because Ionus Cryptborn, he's a shady character. He's in Shaiish all the time. He's all about the souls. I haven't read the story. I think it's probably something to do with trying to perfect the reforging process, whatever. But I want him to look menacing. I want him to look dark. I'm going to just make the colours the same palette, but I'm just going to shift them into a more muted dark theme because I want him to look menacing. And I'm going to do a lot of the work getting that across with the base, because the base is super important. Now, I've got this really cool colour scheme I use for my Ossiarch Bone Reapers, and I'm going to replicate that colour because I really like it. And it's a green, basically. It's a green-blue. It's got no business being on a base, but it's going to give me great contrast with a Crimson Drake, because red and green, they are contrasting colours. So if I take a greenish blue and a purplish red, they should really pop off each other. And I'm going to use a neutral grey on the rock to separate the two areas so it's not too garish. Hopefully that'll work. We'll see. It's got this weird iron chaos symbol thing. I'm going to do that in a brass because I just like the idea of staying away. It could do it in black, something like that. I could put some glow effects in the eyes here, but it's broken. I don't want it to look like it's active. Don't know what it is. A bit of Age of Sigmar terrain. It could be an archway. Who knows? I'm going to do it in like tarnished brass. That should tie it in with some of the stuff I'm doing on the model. And I will make that area look different to any metallics that are on the model somehow, some way. So, sub-assemble. Now, I have actually left the head off. Now, the reason is I can put this on one of my best kept secrets, or not really a secret, but one of my little things. So, I like to use cocktail sticks and corks with pennies or 2p's stuck underneath. And I sometimes do it on top because that allows me to use magnets. But for this one, it would be a standard, and you get a cocktail stick. And the good thing about cocktail sticks, they've got a tapered end, right? So you could push this in the cork, and then you could drill a hole if you wanted to. Don't need to on this one. And you can just stick that using your trusty blue tack, and then it gives you a thing to hold it on. And what you can do is, I'm not going to use those, but you could take a pair of cutters and you can cut the top of that off and get more what we call like a stubby stick. And what that allows, it gives you a different contact area. Now, what this means as well is if you drill a hole, so you see this is a stubby stick, if you drill a hole into something to push a stick in, then actually there's like a natural hole there. Because it's tapered, you can kind of find the sweet spot, and you don't need to get the right drill bit and the right hole, and then maybe the model's got a smaller contact area and you can't do it. So there you go, done. And I can paint that. I can also, with this, use a spray handle and cramp onto that, and it keeps it weighted so it doesn't tip over. So that is a cork stuck on a 2p with a cocktail stick. Don't need a fancy paint handle. That'll do you. Blue tack is a godsend. I use it all the time. I use it even for transporting armies in a plastic box. Best kept secret. So I will stick that back on, because when I spray it, again, I'm going to spray it with the head on, because I don't want to get the contact areas covered. And I want the shadow. I want the shadow of the horns and that to be where I'm going to xenophil this, and I'll talk about that later when I do two-tone spray. I don't want the underside being too bright, because it wouldn't be, because the horns. So I'm going to try and keep that on. And likewise for the base, when I spray the base, to keep the contact points clean, I will put the dragon on like that. So that's my... Oh, there you go. Come back, mate. That's my sort of sub-assemblies. Find the sweet spot where it locks in. So well engineered now. I remember when kits were never like this. But, you know, so that's that. And you could glue it like that and paint it like that. You can get to pretty much everything. You know, you're not restricted. And I haven't got a pin or anything for this, because I'd have to put it in one of these foot pieces. It's quite a big model. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to wrap this, and I'm going to hold it by the throne and this area. So when I paint this, I'm going to hold it on here to get the beast done. Once the beast is done, I'm going to stick it down, and then I'll come in and paint this detail on the throne, because then I can hold it by the base. So that's my approach. I'm going to paint the base first. Then once I've got the beast sort of underside painted, I'm going to stick him on. Then I'm going to finish the beast, and he's done. Now that's my plan for today, along with the wings. Now the wings, a little bit more complicated. Again, this is just a brass rod, and I've drilled a hole this time, and I've put super glue. Again, I've got my trusty cork with coin. This goes right the way down to the bottom. This brass rod is quite long. And why is it bent? Well, the reason it's bent is because I wanted to try and get it roughly in the join of the model. So this one joins, I've absolutely failed miserably, joins like this. So what I want to do is make sure that when I get this done, so this is probably the position it should be, okay? So all I'm going to do is bend this way. Oops. So the idea of this is to try and replicate the darkness of where the wing would be. So if that was the model, this is kind of the joint. So giving a long wire like this allows me. So really what I want to do is hold it like that and it be in the right position. So it's still a little bit. That's roughly. It doesn't have to be that exact. So that there. And if you think, oh, it's a bit top heavy there, you can just spin it around like that. And that changes the center of gravity. So that there is the position of the wing that I'm going to paint separately. And all I've done is drilled a hole, put a bend in, put another bend in, and this is like the base of the model. So I want that. So when it stood there, if that plane was there, it says knocking it over, that's pretty much where it'd be. Okay, so that's that one. Done the same on the other side. Hopefully I've got this one a bit better. And yeah, that was pretty much bob on. So that's where that wing goes. So if I put the two wings and the model side by side, that's the kind of profile on that one. If I can get that lined up for you. Yeah, and then this is the profile on this one. And again, I'm not going to spend too long. This one's a little bit more wobbly. Fart-arsing around with this. Now, you could just go, that looks like a lot of effort, right? And what you could do is you could blue tack this and you could hold it here to paint the wing. And then you could then glue it on and then just touch this bit up. Now, I'm not going to be doing that. I will put some blue tack on the join to protect it. I haven't done that yet, so that's fairly easy. And I will paint this separately to a point. Now, when I talk about the colour scheme, they've done something which I think is a bit weird. They've missed an opportunity to have a two-tone wing membrane. Normally, when you see models like this, the membrane is a different colour to the skin. It doesn't really make much sense from a nature point of view, but from a model, it can look cool. I'm going to stick with their scheme, but what I am going to try and do is I'm going to try and shift the palette so the membranes are darker than the body. So the membranes, I'm going to wash them down so they are a darker colour than the main body of the Drake. And then what I'll probably do is I'll use a light colour to come in from the M membrane here and like from the tip. So it's light here, goes dark as it gets towards here, but then the pinions, sort of the lines here, will be lighter. So they do stand out, but it's all going to be red. So it's not going to be like cream and red or brown and red or whatever. It's just going to be different shades of crimson red. So that's the sub-assemblies. Now, I don't really like sub-assemblies. It kind of annoys me. I like to stick my stuff together and then paint it. Unfortunately, because of the layered nature of this, it's a bit difficult. You could do more sub-assemblies. You could leave armor plates off. You could leave the throne off. I don't want to mess around with that. Ionus Cryptborn, again, the model himself. You could leave this off, you could leave the cloak off. The problem with the cloak is his arms are attached to the cloak, and that joins together, and the shoulder pads go on top. Now, it's a bit like when I did Sigvold, and I was thinking, because you see here, like the cloak and the 2 shoulder pads go on top, and I was thinking, I could do that, but actually, like, it's quite a big model, and I can get a brush in those areas, and it's going to be dark, so they're going to be dark recesses. I don't need to highlight them, and you know, don't need to be super well painted. You know, I can get a brush in, that's fine. Look, I've got all the access round, and if you can't see it very well, it doesn't really matter. As long as it's not got white showing or anything like that, and it's like dark, it doesn't matter. So I was like, I could have laboured the point with that, but no, I'm going to leave him like that. And then the head is the only thing I've kept separate. I'll do this all focus. I'll do the Byron trick. Normally works. There you go. So the head, that's going to be done separately, and that's purely because he does have quite a big collar. So if you look on the picture here, let me get this closer so you can see it. So if you look at the picture here, it covers most of his face. So like getting a brush in underneath to paint, that would be a pain in the ass. Now let's talk. So that's the assembly. Now I'm sorry if that was a bit laboured and a bit long. Hopefully you picked up some tips. Again, do what you want. Don't have to sub-assemble it. It does say to it in instructions. I think it'd be super awkward to do the wings without, if you do stick them on, getting some bits in the body would be super awkward, but then painting them separately is super awkward. So it's just what you're comfortable with. I think if you're going to airbrush, you can probably get the shading in and around no problem. There isn't a lot of detail on the model itself to paint other than the straps. You've got the golden armor. You should be able to get into that. The scales on his body, if you're doing them a different color, so I'll probably darken mine up a little bit. That might dictate that effort. So I'm not going to be doing anything too advanced with the Drake. I don't want to I kind of want to keep it simple. So I'm not going to be edge highlighting. I'm going to be dry brushing with care to highlight. So let's talk about the color scheme. So hello again. Sorry, it's my face. So this is the picture that's on the community. There's a story. It's whatever. But that's the color scheme. So it's a bit unusual because the Lord Relictor they've done in black, and he is from Hammers of Sigmar, so I'd expect him to be in blue and gold, but they've done him in pure black. I don't know if there's a reason. Maybe in the story there's a reason. I'm going to do mine in black and bone with brass, what sort of gold, ancient gold looking armor. So I'm going to follow this. I love burgundy. So burgundy shaft, burgundy cloak, white on the inside with a trim. I'm very comfortable painting all that. Blue glowing eyes. Ticks the box for me. Perfect. The armor on the Drake, very simple. The Drake's red. The hair's kind of like a black with a greenish look. Black talons, again, makes it super easy. He has got these white pearlescent eyes. I'm going to try and do that effect. I'm not going to do any OSL on that. I think they're meant to look like spirit eyes. He does have a cream underbelly. Now, if you look at the actual model itself... Oh, they have done it, yeah. So if we look at the actual model, so I don't know if it's on the box, you can see they have got the cream here on the tail. Yeah, so I'll replicate that. Paint job on the box is really nice, actually. They're giving him blue eyes. They've done... The armor is actually brass on the dragon, not gold. And they've done it with some verdigris around the rivets. So that's right up my street. Love that. So yeah, we're going to give that a go. So that's it for this video. If you want to know about the rattle can phase, what sprays I used, I'll do that next. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.